All right. Here we go again. Yes. 2 days in a row. That's good for me. But it was music last night, so there's always a lot of things going on after music. And so today I want to address something directly. So in my own process, spontaneity is very, very important. Very important. This process I've described to you here, this thing that I'm doing with you, is actually a discipline of being spontaneous with talking, if you will, with communicating. And music is a very spontaneous creation for me as well. Uh, and the spontaneity itself is what I want to talk about. Because yesterday, talking about the survivors, right? One attribute I find about the survivors is they're very, very predictable. That's a problem, because any kind of survival technique is based in the past, right? History, thinking, future. You are abstracted from the living moment, and you're going to survive the living moment because of this mind process that you're involved in. And I've been watching a guy lately who talks a lot about how our thinking process and our history experience becomes very habituated, and how that can reduce your authenticity and also reduce the possibilities in life. And so this is something that I'm very interested in, because the spontaneity is a thing which opens me in life. And so I'm going to talk about this in some of the things that I've learned from Carlos Castaneda, of course, because of all the things I've learned, the most meaningful, the spine of my learning has been from Carlos Castaneda, to be honest. And so all his attributes of warriorhood and talking about, dreaming and versus stalking, which is kind of acting, controlling your behavior, it's all very much informed how I live. And so when I think about spontaneity, I think about two things. I think about the disruption of life's routines, and I think about erasing personal history. And so both of these things are interesting, because I'm a routine-oriented person. I do things a lot of the same way from day to day. We all got routines, right? But when you're in a routine, things are predictable. That's what we like about routines. It's familiar, it's comfortable, And the process of disrupting the routines brings your awareness into the routine. So you get to understand, well, why am I doing this? It's important. This is kind of recapitulation process, which is to examine and understand and feel every aspect of something you're involved in. And so with a routine, it's good to recognize routines, what you're getting out of the routine, why you do the routine, how it fits into your life. Often what the history is, which makes it a routine. That's really interesting. So I deliberately try to practice disrupting my routines to try and stir up this spontaneity, right? It's the same thing with erasing personal history. I used to be sort of nervous of that concept, but now I realize that erasing personal history is not to just do away with it. Yes, it is that in a way, but it's also examining, understanding, feeling every aspect of the way history affects us. And once you realize and acknowledge these connections, then you can let them go. It's not like you ever lose your story. You can call on your story at any time you want. That's the essence of it, though. Are you sovereign in the way that you utilize your history, or is your history kind of got the sovereignty over you? That's interesting to me. And so what I find interesting, I've been talking to you about how the healing has got this physical dimension. I can talk all about the broken inner processes, right? But the pathway inside is through the body, through all the pain of the body. And my insight is very much something which pain opens inside of me. Acknowledging pain, feeling pain, being present in the pain is literally to bring myself in contact with my history. And then by the recapitulation, I learn about it. What's really weird to me lately is that a lot of times when I'm, I guess, meditating, I suppose, I just get really still. I get as comfortable as I can be and then I just get still and get silent. Inevitably, what happens after a certain period of time, I get these weird, like my facial expressions contort. It's weird to describe. My eyes get really wet. Oftentimes the tears will be coming down my face. And it's almost like this history of like unexpressed feeling, which I'm going through, and the process that I go through now is very much involved in my face. If I sit there for an hour, sometimes two, just being quiet, meditating, I suppose, this experience happens, and it's silent. It's silent, and it's very, very physical. And then as a result of it, I feel very calm and very quiet and very peaceful. The thing is that opening these spaces inside myself, it's like I'm very careful with how I'm thinking about it, because thinking is automatically like a historic process, if you're not in control of it, right? And I find that spontaneity is a tool which helps me discover new parts of myself that I've opened up through healing. And then by being spontaneous about it, I'm bringing it out in a new way, which allows me to less likely descend into some kind of history routine, It's something that I'm really concentrating on right now, because I come here to you and I'm being really like, this is vulnerability. This is authenticity. My discipline to come here and put a camera on myself and talk to you strangers of the internet who I hope I'm going to create bonds of friendship with over time. But the importance of it is it draws me out of my routine, of whatever routines I'm stuck in, It brings my awareness to the fore. It draws me out. It taps my energy. It taps my flow state to be spontaneous. Because I do find that life is an experience of spontaneity. Yes, we have to learn about how to interact with life. But when we were really, truly in our best, highest vibrational being, it's like we're making it up as we go along. That's what life is. That's what evolution is. Evolution is making shit up as we all go along together. That's what it is, right? Authenticity and creation is an act of like loving energy being as an expansion. And I'm in this phase right now where spontaneity is the thing which liberates me, keeps me from resorting to the habits and the routines, because for all these years of my life, up to 2018, I was a total prisoner of routines and habits that I wasn't even aware of, because I couldn't acknowledge that something was really wrong, because I thought something was so wrong that I was trapped, as I've said many times before. Even in that period, I still had music, and music was my one spontaneous thing where I was constantly rediscovering and healing. And it got to a certain level where integration had to occur, and then spirit resolved that for me. Or rather, spirit created the situation, and as I emerged into it, as the descent of the spirit, it resolved those dualities for me, and everything merged into one. And so as I've gone forward, spontaneity is a way of like knitting all these things together, weaving things together, blending things together. I don't know, use the descriptor that you want, but the spontaneity, it's like being able to be spontaneous is a way to not revert to habitual ways. And that's the process that I'm in, because healing is very much about healing old ways, which are unhealthy. And so where do you go from there? Well, the only way is to be spontaneous in some way, to spontaneously activate your energy, and see what happens, and just take a chance, every time I come here, it's like until I have the camera on, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing, and it's sort of like a low grade, bubbling up of like vaguely of anxious thoughts and feelings, right? And if I'm saying something that's really, really true for me afterwards, I have a bit of a self-consciousness, like, oh my God, people know this about me, right? And yet all of that is the responses from history, my own personal history, fear of exposure, fear of being seen, fear of being authentic and vulnerable, ultimately, and I refuse that fear. I acknowledge that it's there, because fear is just a kind of, it's just a part of our energy, It's like, I've always thought of it as like the first face of energy is fear. It's always there. You're always but it's a question of how you react to it. Do you allow it to dominate you, or do you just allow it to become part of your process and expand into the next layer of whatever you're experiencing? And spontaneity is a very useful tool for me. And that's what I'm practicing here with you, is the spontaneity. And as something that I want to share, it's like, I think that when you notice people who are the survivors, you know what I mean? Like you can start noticing how predictable people are. Or if you're really honest about it, notice how predictable you are, right? It's all about getting out of the predictable patterns to be authentic in this moment, because every moment is happening, and it is an ongoing moment of like loving, healing, evolving, dreaming. Like spirit is active and moving in every moment that we are alive, whether we know it or not, whether we're moving with it or not, doesn't matter what's going on, life is happening anyway. And so I consider this to be a call to be as present and alive as I can be in this very short time that I have here. And spontaneity is my tool, because, and it's hard to talk about, because like, if I talk about healing and all this silent body work that I'm doing to uncover all the places in my body where I've like held stress and been compressed and been stuck and made terrible mistakes and fucked up, all that process, right? Thinking doesn't really help, but like thinking is like, thinking comes after. And so someone who got a very active mind and have always been like caught up in thinking, like it's been very hard for me to be in silence and to heal, because healing is nonverbal. And that's hard for me, actually, to be honest with you. So like all this healing that I'm doing lately is nonverbal. And so how I then proceed is like a question to me, it's like, it's not the way I am not how I used to be. So how am I? Like any memory in my life that I go back to, it's like, I was thinking about it last night. It's like every memory I have, the image is like a hollow, empty cup, because there's certain visuals, but I was so blocked and so turned off and so unable to be in the moment that it's just like these memories are just like these empty vignettes where nothing was happening, because I wasn't doing anything. I wasn't looking, I wasn't paying attention, I wasn't being involved, I wasn't spontaneous. I was just this frozen Easter Island man that I say, The healing then is like, it's like healing through those memories is to go back and like recover that frozen, stunned, totally traumatized young person, right? Integrate them, And as I say, this has this weird process of like physical contortions, like my face will contort. It's like I'm going through all of these unexpressed, unfelt moments where I was feeling and I was alive, because we're alive in every moment of our being, but we're not always authentic. We're not always awake to it. We're not always fully present. So where are we? Well, we're somewhere else, right? So to go back into those moments and like bring my full being there and incorporate that little piece of myself, as it were, right? I get all these physical sensations. Well, then to be in this moment and to integrate all of that, the only way for me to do that is a kind of spontaneous thing. I can't really describe it better than that. It's like when I sung about things last night, I discovered lots of new dimensions, like I was singing about memories as empty cups, because that's what it feels like. There's nothing in them. It's just because I wasn't in them, you see? And I sang about the Easter Island Man. It's another motif I sing about, Easter Island Man is, I said this the other day, but I'll say it again. It's like you got to imagine those Easter Island statues, those gigantic stone faces sitting there gazing out into the sea. For me, I find that a powerful image for a certain kind of person who becomes frozen inside. They become frozen inside and they just stop and they're looking out to sea, And I've always identified as an Easter Island man, and I've known many of my friends who are Easter Island men and maybe still are, right? But last night I sang about the Easter Island man standing up and walking inland. Stop gazing out to sea, Because the storm that brought you here left you to go inland. That's another part of my metaphor. See, I'm including my singing a little bit here, and it's figurative, because as I sing of my metaphor of the Magic Island and the shipwreck of the Magic Island, like in my metaphor, you don't get to the Magic Island. You never planned to come here. It's storm. It's a storm shipwreck that brings you to the Magic Island. It's just the way it is. How did we get here? Even birth is like, how do we get here? How do we get to this Magic Island? Who the fuck knows, right? But now in my singing, I'm realizing that like I've always been very focused in the storm and the powers that brought me to the island. Now I'm beginning to realize that I've been brought to the Magic Island to go inland. Inland is the inner journey, and the inner journey is a silent journey, And I'm sorry to maybe convolute some of what I'm saying in my sort of singing poetic imagery, but this is what I'm talking about. To sing and create beautiful poetry for me out of this undiscovered inside landscape that I've always been separated from. It's like somehow being spontaneous with it allows me to vibrate fully, because I'm outside of my habits and my patterns and my routines and my personal history. Because personal history isn't for me just something that's it's limiting me. It was limiting me and causing me great physical pain and a wasteland and disruptive experience in the outer world that I was involved in, and led me to endless hardships and mistakes and nastiness, right? And so spontaneity is like one of the only ways that I can just be present and expand. And once I am present and expand, then I sort of welcome my mind in a little bit, because to be poetic, to be a singer, is to allow mind in again, right? But being spontaneous is like deliberately putting the intent out first, loving, healing, evolving, dreaming, learning. It's an intent that is important to put out first. And then I allow mind in. Mind is the passenger of intent. And spontaneity is a way that I allow intent to guide me. Hard to talk about. It's hard to talk about, because you can't be authentic if you're stuck in your routines and habits and patterns. You can't be authentic if you are only responding out of your historic process. And so in a way, authenticity is a spontaneity, in a way, And when it comes to intent, a lot of times when it comes to manifesting, I'm not even sure what to ask Spirit for, because anything I ask for is to put my mind first and foremost, and then I'm caught in this past to future abstraction from the moment, you know? Abstraction is what I want, but not that kind of abstraction. Abstraction, I don't want abstraction in terms of the world of ideas. If I need to have an idea, I want the idea to open into energy reality. That's why oftentimes when I think about the things that I'm like, I make an idea about is something like freedom, energy, loving, learning. You know, these are intentions which create positive realities, but which are open-ended. You know, to invoke freedom is to invoke a state which, like, is an ongoing process of being. You never achieve it. You have it while you're working on it, and you're working towards it always, because there's always more, because we are infinity expanding into eternity. And so we need open-ended ideas in order for us to truly be in flow state and to be in that authentic energy being. See, I don't really have any plan today. All I knew is I wanted to say something about spontaneity, because it's the spontaneousness that gets me flowing, gets me out of the mind thinking, history, future projection situation. And yet, what is it that I'm opening? Well, it's a kind of physical, healthful vitality. It's aliveness. And it's also any idea that's got that open-endedness that allows you to flow into infinity, which is, like, say, freedom. I call this station Freedom Radio because I thought it was going to be a lot about music. But as it's turned out, here I am talking to you. It's still Freedom Radio because it's energy frequency communicating the vibration band of freedom. That's what I'm doing here. And spontaneity is a very key element for me, because as a practice, it makes me more alert and attuned to the spontaneous moments. Like I described my experience with the Christians a few weeks ago. You know, it's like the spontaneity allows me to realize how I'm limiting myself in my moments in order to be more present, you know? I had to get over a bunch of things in order to have that great moment with them. And in fact, last week when we played, this other player came and joined us, and I ordinarily have a negative attitude towards him because he's not really a giver. He's a taker. He comes into the scene and he's only about his own thing. He's not really listening to anybody else. And we're doing a very specific energy authenticity expression, you know, spontaneity, getting outside of the routines and getting ecstatic, right? But in this one moment, it's like I made the effort to make a bridge to him. And that this is me getting over my reticence, you know, to include someone who, I mean, he's obviously a survivor, to use that language that I used yesterday, because he's very predictable. He's very predictable, scattered, unfocused, and enclosed in his own process, you know. But by being more present and by building a bridge and by allowing him in to a certain extent, you know, I learned more about my limitations and the limitations of my habits and my preconceived notions, because I need to shed them. I don't want those anymore. I want pure energy being. I want my knowing to be a learning process of loving, dreaming freedom. And the spontaneity is the key piece. So that's what I wanted to say today, spontaneity. And by even coming here, I am doing it again. This is my discipline, to be spontaneous with you so that I discover something new about myself. And over time, even I am learning from this process. Like, you'd be amazed. I keep learning new things, you know, just by doing this with you. Just the act of being spontaneous creates its own momentum. And then that new momentum, I mean, it is all about, you know, alignment shift, right? The way Carlos Castaneda talks about it, right? It's like, now that my alignment is shifted, you know, and I understand that the authenticity allows me to sustain that momentum and be in that living, loving, healing, evolving, dreaming process. So take that for what you will. I'm sure I'll be back, and at that point, I'll carry on. Until then, be well and find that spontaneity in your life. Find that way to engage freshly, you know? Be new to yourself. Be new to others. And if there's anything in the way, what do I always say? Feel that love. And if there's something in the way, heal it. The work works. That's all I got to say. So, until then, be well, and I'll see you next time.